G'day everyone, John here. Let me start with a slightly ridiculous question. If the government banned Marmite or Vegemite from your breakfast, would you shrug and move on, or would you seriously consider calling a human rights lawyer? In most places, that might sound unhinged. In Australia, it almost passes a Tuesday. In this video, I want to talk about a satirical article I've written about an Aussie prisoner, a banned jar of yeast spread, and what happens when power gets so obsessed with control that it starts to look completely absurd. So, picture this. You're in a concrete box. You've already lost your freedom, your privacy, and most of your everyday choices. Breakfast is not exactly a highlight, and then one day, the state calmly decides that the small brown smear that makes your toast almost edible is now a security threat. No more Marmite, no more Vegemite, no more holy scrape on bread, just dry toast and a vague sense that someone somewhere really doesn't like you being even slightly human. In the article, I imagine a prisoner called Andre who decides this is the line in the sand. He isn't just grumpy about breakfast. In his mind, he's defending civilization. He argues that banning Marmite isn't just inconvenient, it's a breach of his cultural and human rights as an Australian. Now, played straight, that sounds ridiculous, which is the whole point. To ramp up the absurdity, I give Marmite or Vegemite a completely fabricated origin story. Starts in a monastery kitchen as an accident involving beer sludge and toast. A novice takes a bite, the heavens open, choirs sing, and suddenly the monks have invented the world's first holy breakfast. Fast forward a few hundred years and the stuff arrives in the colonies. The sun is harsh, the snakes are poisonous, and the British are still wearing wool. The one reliable comfort is a smear of salty black goo on toast that tastes like a dare and somehow feels like home. Over time, this simple spread turns into a cultural icon. Tradies won't start the day without it. Kids grow up learning the correct smear thickness. Soldiers take it overseas. It becomes a quiet little ritual that says, we're in this together. We're still us. And then along comes the modern state. Vests, clipboards, risk frameworks. Somewhere in a grey office, a committee sits down and decides the yeast spread is now a problem. On paper, they talk about smuggling, false scents for sniffer dogs, even prison homebrew. But the effect is simple. The small, silly human ritual that breaks up a grim day gets wiped off the tray. In the article, I push it into full courtroom farce. You've got cultural historians explaining the holy smear to a judge, sociologists correlating Marmite consumption with resilience and sarcasm, maybe even a theologian carefully comparing breakfast to communion. On the other side, you've got the state insisting that civilization will crumble if inmates are allowed to taste nostalgia on toast. Somewhere in the middle sits a lonely jar of Vegemite as Exhibit A, doing its best. It's meant to be funny, but underneath the joke there's a serious question. What does it say about a system where it is so determined to be tough that it can't tolerate even tiny dignities like a familiar taste in the morning? When we strip away all the small things that remind people they're still human, what exactly are we hoping to achieve? You see versions of this everywhere, in workplaces that fuss over dress codes but ignore burnout, in policy that fixate on punishment and barely glances at rehabilitation, in leaders who think removing comforts is the same thing as building character. The Vegemite story is deliberately extreme, but it holds up a funhouse mirror to that mindset. It asks, if you're prepared to wage war on toast, what else will you justify in the name of order? So, if any of this nudges you to think about how you use power as a leader, a manager, policymaker, or even just as a parent, then the joke has done its job. Because sometimes the easiest way to see the absurdity of a system is to follow it to a ridiculous conclusion, like a full-blown human rights argument over a jar of yeast extract. Well, thanks for being here. Please take a look at the extended article that's linked below, and I hope to see you back here again soon for either something ridiculous or something deadly serious. Thanks. See ya.